Hi, Therese. Thank you so much for coming on my channel and for taking the time to speak to my audience and share your Violet Flame experience. So if you'd like to, maybe you can introduce yourself and, have at it. You can tell us whatever you would like to about your Violet Flame experience.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having me on your show. I think it's wonderful that you're doing this work to spread the violet flame and the teachings of the Ascended Masters to the world. I'm very thankful for that. And yes, my name is Therese Emmanuel. I've been working with the Ascended Masters for about 35 years, and my path began with an experience with the violet flame. It was actually the violet flame that congealed my appreciation for the teachings. And it's when I experienced the violet flame for the first time that I knew I had found everything I was looking for. I had been searching and seeking spiritually for probably 3 years. And so I had been doing different mantras and different things and meditating and all of that. And it was really when I found the picture of Saint Germain, or the picture of Saint Germain found me, and the chart of the I Am Presence. And then I said, yes, I want to try the violet flame. And this was actually in South America. It was in Argentina, and I discovered Saint Germain on a bus ride home from Iguazu Falls, which is a beautiful retreat between Brazil and Argentina. And on the way home, I found uh, the teachings, and then I met up with a group that was doing Violet Flame and other affirmations and decrees. And when I had finished doing Violet Flame for about an hour and a half with them, I felt like I was walking on a cloud, and I just knew that this is what my soul had been looking for more than anything else, any other path, uh, and any other spiritual path on the planet. Basically, it was really um, coming home. It was coming home. And so I've done experienced and done prayers and affirmations and decrees of the violet flame for 35 years now. And I spent a lot of time in the earlier part of my path where I had the opportunity to be at the Royal Teton Ranch, where we would do long services of violet flame decrees. And it was for many years I had the opportunity to do violet flame for 3 to 5 hours a day, and that was very transforming. That's very, very transforming because it accelerates your spiritual path. It accelerates your cellular structure. It accelerates everything, and you also know that you're transmuting or balancing karma, negative karma, and so those are some of the qualities of the violet flame, and I am so thankful for this experience. Later in my path, I developed a well, it was a radio show on the violet flame where we were doing mantras, and a website called Violet Flame Miracles, and I wrote and published a little book called The Miracle Violet Flame. And it's all there on that website. And I gathered testimonials from people also on the Violet Flame. And so I was really happy to be able to do that because I was basically giving the Violet Flame every day on air to people, seekers out there who were wanting to learn about the Violet Flame. And so that went on for a number of years also. And and so yes, I am thankful. I remember when I was a little girl, I was raised in France as a little girl, and I remember one time I must have been 3 or 4, and I remember walking down this pathway in my hometown, and I remember thinking, oh my goodness, the colors of purple and pink, how I love purple and pink. There's no more beautiful colors in the world than purple and pink, you know? And and so that was my experience as a little girl, as a child. I just loved those two colors put together, and that was really my soul recognizing the violet flame. Yes. So
And it's so inspiring, your whole story.
yeah.
So you've probably done a lot of violet flame in the retreats before incarnating this time, and also, who knows, in other lifetimes, right?
Right, right. Well, um, I I believe that's true. I had the opportunity growing up near Paris to spend a lot of time in Paris, and if you look at some of the buildings like the Louvre and of course the churches and all of that, there are a lot of statues that are on top of the buildings, and they really represent the idea of a brotherhood of light, of a great white brotherhood of beings of light, gods, goddesses, beings who have transcended this earth plane. And so that is prevalent all through um, Paris and a lot of European cities, actually. I mean, you find that in other cities as well, and even in Washington, D.C., and wherever there's a strong cultural element. And it's this idea of these masters, these beings who are that we can aspire to become and that hold keys of wisdom for us. I remember as a little girl, I loved to connect to Pallas Athena and among the Greek mythology. But of course, I would also love to read the Bible, and so it was like all these various aspects of Western culture coming together for me, and so that was very important for me to have that in my consciousness. And so then later, after I found the teachings and the path, and I started working on illustrations for the retreats of the heaven world. I wanted to give people this awareness of the retreats, that our souls, when we go to sleep at night, our souls actually leave the body, and we have an etheric double, which is like a bodysuit, and a spiritual bodysuit, and we go up to the retreats of the masters in the Great White Brotherhood that are all over the planet in very sacred and special places. And then there's also etheric cities, and this is where souls get training, teaching, and we do services. We do different wonderful activities and things. And there's a beautiful book called The Masters in the Retreats. And I also put out a little book called Journey to the Etheric Retreats of the Heaven World. And I created a website called ethericretreats.com where you can go and you can look at all of the retreats. I tried to create these illustrations based on the descriptions that the masters gave in the book, so that it tunes into the, at least in consciousness and in concept and fohat to the description that the masters have given us. And so that was a very important labor of love in my life, to connect to that. And I know, like, even nowadays, there are oftentimes, many times, where I'll wake up in the morning with a song playing in my aura. I can hear the song, I can remember the song, and and so that's a confirmation for me that that came back from the retreats. And so, like a couple of days ago, we were singing Saint Germain's coronation hymn as I was coming back into my body, and I think it was the day after that, I remember waking up with it was actually a Christmas song that was playing, and it was Hark the Herald Angels Sing. So these are things that give me a sense of connection, and it's like the connectivity between our earth plane where we're functioning and the awareness of other planes. I don't have full recollections most of the time, though I have had some dreams here and there in the last 3 decades. But typically it's more through music that I'll remember some level of, yes, we were there and we were doing this work. And so it's really amazing when you think about, there's a beautiful book called Ashram Notes that El Morya gave us, and through that book we have the ashram rituals, and he speaks of the work that the soul does at night as we journey out of our body, and we can go to these retreats. And the violet flame, of course, is very important because it helps lift us. It helps transmute the baggage that would hold us back. And so we go to these retreats, and we have training, we have tutoring, we also have a sense of brotherhood. There are so many more souls in the retreats that are our brothers and sisters than we know on the outer path. And then we also do world service. We can bring our energies together to do world service, to direct certain divine energies into certain places. I hope we're doing something strong I'm sure we are, for what's going on in Gaza, which is under Jesus's retreat over the Holy Land. And so these are the various things that we do at night. We do world service, and it's very important because it's preparing us for the time when we will graduate from Earth Schoolroom and become Ascended Masters. And that is truly the promise that the violet flame brings to us, because when we study the teachings, we are given the awareness of this beautiful, most generous dispensation that was given to us by a group of Ascended Masters called the Great Karmic Board, or the Lords of Karma. These are the beings that help us determine what situation we're going to be incarnating into when we come back into embodiment. And together with our higher self, our Holy Christ self, these beings determine the circumstances that we'll have to face and go through and grow through in the next life. And so these beings, there's 7 and then an 8th Buddha who joined. But anyway, these great beings, the Great Karmic Board, help us lifetime after lifetime. And they gave a dispensation in, I believe it was about the middle of the last century, where we were told that we were able to balance 51% of our karma to ascend home to God. In the past, and all of the centuries past of Earth's evolution, souls had to balance 100% of their karma to permanently reunite with God. And so that's why there were souls that had great light and holiness, but they were still reincarnating. They hadn't gotten to the 100% mark. And in this dispensation, this is basically preparing us for the Aquarian age. We're now in the Aquarian age, but this was preparing us for the Aquarian age, which is the age of Saint Germain and the violet flame. We were given this opportunity to come home with 51% balanced, and then balance the rest on the inner. And so, for example, the twin flame of Jesus, beloved Magda, who was incarnate as Mary Magdalene, she ascended with, I think it was around 51% balance, something like that, right around the 51% mark. And then she balanced the rest on the inner. And a number of years later, Jesus gave a dictation where he told us that his twin flame had balanced the full amount, and that she was now free to go on into higher levels of service and consciousness with him. And so she's just one example of many. And so we have to take great advantage of this dispensation. And the second part of this dispensation is that if we do violet flame every day, at least 15 minutes, because when we give 15 minutes of focused violet flame, it can be multiplied 10 times. And so that is the equivalent of 150 minutes. And these are other gifts or boons that the Ascended Masters have given us. And they are giving us these boons through their causal body of light, through their cosmic bank account. And so Saint Germain gave us the understanding and the awareness of the violet flame. And then other masters who serve on that ray have also given us gifts or boons from their attainment in God to help us to accelerate our path home. And so we were given one of these dispensations was this multiplication by the power of 10. And so when we give violet flame, we can call for it to be multiplied 10 times as long as we give at least 15 minutes. And so what we were told is that if we do this violet flame diligently every day, within we balance on average about 1% a year of our karma. Now this is average, but I think it lends itself to most people, you know. And it's very hopeful because we were also told that if a person is interested in these teachings in the least, they have to have at least 25% of their karma balanced. So if you are watching this, you can pretty much figure out that you have at least 25% of your karma, personal karma balance. You could be more, you could be at 50%, but you're going to be at least at 25% because people who are under 25% have no interest in these teachings whatsoever. They're just not, the soul and the person is just not developed enough to even have an interest. So if you take that 25% on the low end of the scale and you do the violet flame diligently for 25, 26 years, you have enough to get to the 51%. And that means that most people who have found the teachings of the masters and the teachings of the violet flame, if they are diligent and apply their life to these teachings, will have the opportunity to ascend and not to reincarnate. And that is an extraordinary gift at the beginning of the age of Aquarius, because some of us are old souls that have been around since the age of Lemuria, Atlantis, ancient civilizations, and so forth, and we haven't been able to fully anchor our permanent reunion with God. And so now we have this opportunity like never before, and that's why it's really important to take advantage of that opportunity and to make the most of it. Did you have a question?
Just one comment to what you just said. You said that the teachings say that it takes about a year to balance a percent of karma for most people. I just wanted to say, because I've read another teaching and I can't quite remember where it was, but it was from Elizabeth Clare Prophet, that it might take longer for some people because we all had different lives and we all have different karma. Some people have more karma and others have less karma. As you just said, you know, there's older souls that certainly have more karma than the younger souls. And that teaching was saying that it might even take 4 or 5 years to balance 1% for some.
Well, you know, that is very, very possible. And we know that even from the example of Lanello, who was embodied as Mark Prophet and as Louis XIV and many other lifetimes, he had such great attainment. But when he made his ascension, he was, I think he was in the 60% range. Anyway, he was much lower than what I would have expected. And she ended up balancing the rest of it for him. They were twin flames, so she could do that. And so in the end, they both balanced 100%. But I was pondering how a soul as wonderful and glorious as Lanello, who was also Longfellow and who was also the evangelist Mark, and who was Akhenaten, and all these incredible embodiments, was taking so much longer to balance their karma. And it's because they made a lot of karma too. And what we were told, which is that souls who have been in positions of power over lifetimes, rulers, spiritual rulers, earthly rulers, tend to have a lot more karma because we've made a lot more karma with a lot more people. And so, yes, for some souls, it will take longer, but generally speaking, the 1% is a good way to look at it. I mean, hopefully, if you're diligent, of course, if you can do more than 15 minutes a day, that's great. We also have had these dispensations where if you give the violet flame with other people, it's multiplied by the people you're giving the violet flame with. And so that becomes a much more accelerated way to experience the violet flame. And so there are different boons that have been given to make sure that everyone who strives can, by the grace of God, ascend at the end of their life following the teachings. Now, there are other requirements, like we need to balance our threefold flame, the flame in our heart, meaning we have to have a balanced level of love, wisdom, and power in our mental, emotional, and physical body. We have to fulfill our divine plan, which is our dharma. There are certain things that we have to accomplish. So it's not just the balancing of karma, but the way I experience it or understand it is that it kind of all goes together. The more you do the violet flame, the more you're going to have a lightening of the load. Though we do have to also keep in mind, and Mother explained this, Elizabeth Clare Prophet, she explained this very clearly, that when you get to that 50%, you're moving into the karma on the emotional quadrant. So we're moving from the quadrant that's the mental quadrant to the emotional quadrant, and then from 75% up, it's physical karma. And so the emotional quadrant is probably the most difficult. And so souls who get past the 50% of karma balance sometimes have a very difficult time, whether it's the dark night of the soul. And then beyond that, you have souls like who have to really go through the physical karmas later in life and so forth. And so just because we're moving forward or upward in our percentages does not mean it's going to get easier, and we have to carry on doing that violet flame and putting as much as we can into the flame again and again and again. It's really the flame of transmutation of karma. It's the flame of regeneration. It's the flame of recreation. The masters have even told us that we can recreate history by using the violet flame. So it's very important for us to do that and to take advantage of that. They have told us we can sing it, we can speak it, of course, we can make fiats, we can sing it, we can be creative with it. There are different ways of doing it. You can do it while you're washing your dishes or mowing your lawn or doing your yoga or playing with your children. There were some violet flame songs for children. And so I just want to give that awareness too, because we want to see, it's almost like we want to try to see life through violet flame colored glasses. And that's not easy sometimes, especially when we're bogged down with what's going on in the media and in social media and in general. The earth is a very heavy place right now. We're going through a lot of planetary karma as well. So we have our personal karma. Also, we know that at a certain point, we can take on planetary karma also. And that makes things a little more, it can be more challenging, but we're not usually given that until we're able. In fact, one of the teachings that Kuthumi gave, the Master Kuthumi, who was embodied as St. Francis gave to the, I believe it was to the Theosophical Society, was the awareness of the dispensation of having a sponsoring master. And so he said, when you choose a master that you really dedicate your life to, it can be Jesus, it could be Kuthumi, it could be El Morya, or Gautama Buddha, or Mother Mary. If you really say, this is the master I'm going to really pattern after, and I'm going to do good works in that master's name, and I'm going to read everything I can about that master, and I'm going to really become one with that master. The master is then allowed to take on your personal karma and gives you planetary karma in exchange. But because the planetary karma is a little less personal to you, it's in some ways it's easier to balance. So basically, it's a good deal. I mean, that's what was explained to those students, and I like to think of it that way, because when we have personal karma or planetary karma, we understand that we're helping the brotherhood, we're helping the masters. In fact, I remember teaching once that Mother gave, Elizabeth Clare Prophet, where she said, if you injure the left side of your body, it's planetary karma. If you injure the right side, it's personal karma. So it's always interesting to see, oh, what side of my body is this on? And so these are all the things that are recorded. We were told in the scriptures that even every hair of our head is numbered. So it's all factoring. And Jesus said we have to balance every jot and tittle. So if the masters can help us balance our personal karma, the master that is our sponsoring master, or the one that we choose, and we in turn balance world karma, we can do that world karma by doing Violet Flame services, by giving various decrees like Archangel Michael's Rosary and other services. We can serve life in different ways to help them in their cause. We can give them our carte blanche to our causal body and say, use my causal body. The causal body is our treasures in heaven, the good karma that's stored upstairs in our higher vehicles. We can say, use that for personal situations, for areas of the world that need help. And so it's all of this is done through the Christ, of course, and the Christ, our Christ and their Christ adjudicates how it's done, so that it's all done well, right? Because the Christ doesn't make any mistakes. So anyway, those are some of the alchemies and the gifts that were given through the Violet Flame. Yes.
I have a question. When you spoke about the planetary karma, is there any teaching on when the masters will start to do that? You spoke about the quadrants, etc.
Oh, as far as I understand, that was like immediate.
Oh.
It was an immediate, bargain or exchange. So basically, the idea was that we really dedicate ourselves. We can even meditate on the portrait of the master. We really dedicate ourselves to the master, and then that's what was explained to Kuthumi in that dispensation. And I have heard Mother speak of our sponsoring master also, though I don't know if she gave that exact teaching. She did read from Ledbetter, Chila and the Path, and I'm not sure if that teaching came from that book or another book like The Inner Life. But in any case, Mother was teaching from the Ledbetter books and from these teachings. And so I think it's just good to know that we can have help with our personal karma in areas that might be very difficult or sticky for us to balance, and that in return we are able to help the masters with their world service. I think that's really the point to get from this, and to understand that it's the Christ that adjudicates the how it all comes together. Yes, we have to we have to be assisting our planet, because we have group karmas too. We have group karmas. In fact, we know when Jesus incarnated, it was upward of 90% balanced. I think it was around the mid 90s of his personal karma balance when he came in for his last embodiment. And so to keep him here, he was also balancing world karma. And when he went through the crucifixion, it was for a balancing of world karma. And that's what the Christians understand as dying for the sins of the world, or Jesus died for my sins. It's really, he took on the planetary karma to allow us to keep going. There were a number of souls at the end, at that beginning of the age of the Pisces, at the end of the age, let's see, it would have been Aries to Pisces, Pisces to Aquarius. It goes backwards in the eras. So anyway, that wouldn't possibly not have been able to continue incarnating. And so Jesus was willing, through this crucifixion and through what he went through, to take on the sins of the world, to take on the heaviness of the entire planetary momentum of hatred of the Christ and hatred of souls of light. And he took that all on in his 4 lower bodies as he was going up to Golgotha, and that's why he fell 3 times. And he took that on, and it was for a transmutation. And the Christians, for example, they believe in the blood of Jesus. They say, there are songs that the blood of Jesus has saved them. The blood of Jesus is the light of Jesus, the light in the blood. And even in the ritual of Holy Communion, the wine of the Spirit is the violet flame. And for 2,000 years, the mystics, the saints, the nuns and priests, and the people of faith would take this Holy Communion. And Mother explained, Elizabeth Clare Prophet explained, that that was their way of getting the violet flame. They got it through Jesus's Spirit, right? So, because they did not have the outer awareness of the violet flame, though there are a few places. I saw one chapel in Paris where someone had done an engraving of a saint, and in the auras, in the aura of the saint, there was violet. And so we were told that that on the inner, Jesus would commune with his own and give. Some people had certain intuitions about things. I've been reading the works of Saint Hildegard von Bingen, and she would have these incredible visions of what looks like the causal body and all. And so the mystics have always had this ability to commune with the masters, and the masters to commune with them, and especially Jesus through the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And so this is how people were able to partake of the violet flame. I heard a teaching by Mother, by Elizabeth Clare Prophet, that explained that Jesus gave the teaching of the violet flame to his apostles. And there were a lot of teachings that were given that some of them are in the Gnostic Gospels. I was recently reading Pistis Sophia, which is one of the longer Gnostic texts, and a lot of the teachings of the Ascended Masters are in these Gnostic Gospels, actually, worded a little differently, but it's the same principle. And so we also know from the writings of John, where he said if we would share everything that Jesus had told us, there wouldn't be enough books to contain it, right? That's how he finishes the Gospel of John. And so well, we know from the teachings of the Ascended Masters that Jesus gave the violet flame awareness to his disciples also in that lifetime, and other teachings. We were told he gave them the understanding of calling to the Elohim, the great being of light, Astrea, the starry mother, and that would have been part of the teachings on exorcism and everything else. And so these teachings are eternal. They're forever. They span all of the different dispensations, and those who have the attainment and the ability to reach that level of Christhood or Buddhahood, we're able to perceive these things. And now we have this amazing opportunity to have this available for people, just you and me, and anyone who goes to a bookstore or goes on Amazon can find these teachings. And that was a dispensation from beloved Saint Germain. He gave his causal body, he gave his attainment, he as a collateral for us to be able to have this awareness of the violet flame, because he said some of you wouldn't make it without the violet flame. So we need to really understand that, and also understand that if people take the violet flame and then do things and misuse the light of freedom, it's the light of freedom, it's the light of forgiveness and freedom, then he also has to carry that karma. The masters have to carry the karma, even in the upper spheres. They have to carry the karma for the dispensations that they give. And so that's why some of them are more careful about how many dispensations they give, because if we use it properly, it's like an investment. It becomes a good investment for them, right? Our souls can go home to God, and then many others, and it's really an equation of love. It's an investment of love. But if people misuse the gift, then they do have to pay for it, if you will, from their attainment, because nothing is for free. Everything has to be balanced out in the cosmic mathematics. So that's the cosmic accounting system. So that's the truth, and so we have to be very grateful that Saint Germain gave us that dispensation, yeah. And he was the Wonder Man of Europe. I don't know if you've heard that story, but he was the one who he did not die for 100 years or more. It was almost, anyway, he after Francis Bacon, he basically made his ascension, and walk the earth in a resurrected body, just like Jesus did after his ascension. And he was the one who brought these teachings forward and wrote a beautiful book called the Most Holy Trinisophia, which is a book from that time and all. And the idea was that he was paving the way, he was preparing for the age of Aquarius because he knew the torch would be passed from Jesus to himself. Saint Germain was actually embodied as Joseph, the father of Jesus, and Mother Mary was the bride of Christ and the focus of the world mother for the Piscean dispensation. And then as we move into Aquarius, it shifts to Saint Germain's twin flame beloved Portia. And so Saint Germain and Portia together work. And Portia is mentioned in the Merchant of Venice in the Shakespearean plays that Saint Germain helped write. Well, he was basically the author of the plays through the great divine director. They used the pen name Shakespeare. But anyway, Portia was mentioned there, and Portia is the goddess of opportunity, and this is a tremendous opportunity that we have, and we're if we make the most of it, we can transmute the heaviness and the darkness that we see in the news right now, because we're at a place where there's such a collision of worlds and technology and everything else. And if we can really amp up the violet flame, the idea would be to be able to transmute it so that we can ultimately anchor the foundations for the golden age that is intended to manifest in the age of Aquarius, a few hundred years down the road. So for our Saint Germain. So I'm sure hoping we get there. Yeah.
You mentioned mother. Could you explain who you mean by mother and why you call mother?
Yes. Well, mother is a fond name that we use to speak about Elizabeth Clare Prophet. And Elizabeth Clare Prophet was the messenger of the Great White Brotherhood of the Masters that brought forth so many teachings through the Summit Lighthouse. And she was trained by her late husband, Mark Prophet, who ascended and became the Ascended Master Lanello. And their guru, their spiritual hierarch is El Morya. And Mother made her transition, I believe it was about 15 years ago now. I can't remember the exact date, but she works on inner levels, she works on inner planes, and you can see her when you go to the retreats, when your soul goes to the retreats. She's the one, if you go to any of the Summit Lighthouse videos or dictations or books, you will see her. And my first encounter with her was extraordinary, and I love her very, very much. When she baptized me, there was a voice out of heaven. It was not a normal voice. It was like heaven opened, and I heard a voice resonance come down from the etheric plane. And that voice, that resonance, that light is also present in the dictations that she gives and in many of the lectures, most of them, in fact. And so when you tune into her on YouTube, for example, you can partake of that, because the light is still being released to those who she would like to contact heart to heart. And so yes, I strongly encourage you to do that. We heard stories of people who would even get healing from just watching her videos. People who would be, they used to in the old days poster before an outreach, like a conference or something. They would put posters out there, and sometimes they would put, on, like, say, telephone poles or wherever they were posting, people would put flyers on top of flyers on top of flyers. Well, I heard the story. There was once where there was just a tiny little piece of the poster left about the conference where Mother was attending, but it was her eye that was showing through all the other pieces, and that eye just, like, grabbed someone, and they just, like, ripped up all the other papers on top to see what that was about. And so what I'm explaining is that even if you did not have the opportunity to be with Mother when she was in the physical plane among us, you can completely connect with her through her books and her videos and her dictations and her and her lectures. And just like with Jesus, you can have a wonderful relationship with her that will span the next 2,000 years and beyond. And so that is who I mean when I say mother. Yeah.
Thanks for the explanation. I'd like to comment quickly only on two topics you've mentioned. One was the cosmic clock, and you mentioned some different quadrants. I just wanted to say to my audience, if they are interested, if you're interested in more, I do have, I think it's 6 videos on the karmic clock and how you can basically work with it and transmute your karma with the violet flame. So
Yes.
they can find that
Yes.
on my channel. And then you mentioned also the dispensation from Amritas, the 15 minutes that can be multiplied by 10. I do have another video called, I can't remember the exact title, but it's something about boosters, violet flame boosters. And people can watch that on my channel. And I also do have that on my website. You can get that list with lots of tips about the violet flame and all those dispensations and tips and tricks, basically, how you can get the most out of it. And I would like to go back to your personal story. You mentioned you found the violet flame in the teachings through Saint Germain being on the way back. I think it was from the Iguazu Falls.
Yes.
Can you, like, did you see a picture of him or?
I was talking to someone in the bus. It was a long bus ride. It was like a 14-hour bus ride. And then he pulled a picture out of his pocket and it was Saint Germain, the Chart of the Presence. When I saw the picture of Saint Germain, I said, okay, where do you guys meet? I want to go see this.
Wow.
And then he gave me an address and I caught up with them about a week later, and that's how I did my first Violet Flame session. It was about an hour outside of Buenos Aires in La Plata, and so that's how it was. It was interesting because it was Columbus Day weekend, and so I was studying abroad, and we had Columbus Day weekend off, and which is Saint Germain was embodied as Christopher Columbus, and so I went up to the Iguazu Falls, and I kept saying something really spiritual is going to happen to me this weekend. I know something very spiritual is going to happen to me. This is a spiritual trip. And I went there, and for like 3 days, we were visiting the falls. And I was meditating on the rainbows. I didn't know about our rainbows, so I was using the traditional New Age rainbow chakra things. And just, I was like, okay, I'm going to just focus my chakras on the rainbows and the water, and God's going to come through. I was like, God is coming through for me this weekend. I know it. And then after 3 days there, nothing had happened. And I was kind of like, well, God, I thought you were going to show up for me this weekend. And then on the bus ride home, maybe 6, 7 hours into the bus ride home, this picture of Saint Germain shows up, and I was like, that's what it was. And then of course, when I went and experienced it, I knew it was my whole being. I felt like I was walking on air. Now, of course, different people are going to have different experiences. I know that the masters really supercharged me on that one because that was, there was, that's what I needed to latch onto this path. And the path has not always been easy. It hasn't. I can't say it's an easy path. But at the beginning of the path, we get graces and boons and dispensations. And then over time, it really becomes constancy and steadfastness. And that's the first virtue that the masters present to us in the Keeper of the Flame lessons, which is one of the ways that you can become more familiar to with Saint Germain. When I came back to America, when I came back to Washington, D.C. after being in Argentina, I was walking through the train station in Union Station. It was the big train station, and there was a bookstore there, and the book Science of the Spoken Word just popped off the shelf, just literally dropped in front of me. And I had seen that book in Argentina, but I hadn't picked it up. I picked up books of the I Am movement that I was reading in Spanish, and I Am discourses and different things like that. So, but I had seen the Science of the Spoken Word, and I hadn't made contact yet with the Summit Lighthouse. And so when that book kind of fell in front of me like that, I said, oh my goodness. And I looked it up, and in the back it said, contact this number if you want to become a keeper of the flame. So I said, oh, keeper of the flame, I have to be a keeper of the flame. And so I called them up and they said, you sure you want to be a keeper? You don't know anything about it. I said, no, I'm sure I want to be a keeper of the flame. And so that's how I became a keeper of the flame. And then the lessons, started coming in. The first lesson, actually the first two lessons are, they highlight a certain virtue, and constancy is that virtue. And we have to have constancy. We have to have stick to itness. It's like the parable Jesus gave of the sower and the seeds that, fall on rocky soil. They might take for a little bit, but then they dry out and they die. And so we want to be planted in firm soil, and that firm soil is the constancy that we have to have, because we have to go through all of the experiences that we need to make our ascension, and that will include going through records that involve past lives, even if we don't remember what the lives were, and other situations, personal or planetary. And we have to really hold on fast. The masters have said, in fact, this is in all the Keeper of the Flame lessons, hold on fast to what thou hast received. And so it's very important to have that constancy, and to keep the flame of life, first of all in your own heart, and then life around you, which is really the golden rule that Jesus spoke of. Yes.
Can you explain what Keepers of the Flame are?
Keepers of the Flame, this is a fraternity that was founded by Mark and Elizabeth Clare Prophet. It really started out with I believe it started out with Mark in 1958. Mother had not joined him yet. And so these were the founding dictations of the Summit Lighthouse, but I believe the Keeper of the Flame fraternity started about the same time. The Keeper of the Flame fraternity is sponsored by Saint Germain and the Maha Chohan, who is the representative of the Holy Spirit. And then there is a group of masters that are like a governing board. And I could look it up, but I believe Mother Mary is one of them, but there's like 7 or 8. And they put together these lessons for people to read, and you read 1 lesson a month. And then after 7 lessons, you write to Saint Germain and you say, I'd like to continue, if you want to continue. And then the lessons go hand in hand with learning the spoken word, learning the violet flame, learning how to decree, which is all part of that book, The Science of the Spoken Word. And that's how it evolves. It's a very big honor to be a keeper of the flame. You don't have to leave off whatever religion you were raised with or that you have an affinity to. You can be a keeper of the flame and still be a part of any other religion. So you can be a Catholic keeper of the flame, or a Muslim keeper of the flame, or a Hindu keeper of the flame. The idea of keeper of the flame is that you're keeping the flame of life, and that's the threefold flame in your heart of love, wisdom, and power. And I would like to share an experience about that too, because that also happened to me in Argentina. It was another enormous confirmation for me. I had been reading the I Am books, and I was like definitely tuning into Saint Germain and all. And there was a lady that I had been connecting to who had the most beautiful gemstones, and she had just tremendous jewelry. And I always liked jewelry and gemstones particularly. And I remember thinking, oh, I wish I could have jewelry like that, right? And that was just a passing thought, but I was only 20, and I didn't have that kind of jewelry that time. And so I went to sleep, and as I would kind of lay down on my bed and took a nap or something, and as I was wakening, I was brought into the secret chamber of my heart, and it was a very strong spiritual experience that the masters gave me, and I was able to experience the threefold flame in my heart, and it's almost indescribable. It filled up my whole chest, and it was like resurrection flame. It was opalescent. It was spinning and moving. It was dynamic. It was intelligent. It was such beauty and love and God. It was God. It's the flame of God. It's the flame of life. It's the flame of eternity. And it was like say it's a cosmic dimension because you're in a different dimension when you're accessing it in that way. But it was extremely real and physical. And what I realized as this experience was happening to me was that there was no jewel in the world that could match the jewel of the heart. And this is actually what the Buddhists teach also, beloved Buddha, Gautama, and Kuan Yin. The Om Mani Padme Hum is hail to the jewel in the heart. And so we have this in our hearts. The children of God, the sons and daughters of God have this. And even if you can't see it, and I was graced to have this experience, but which was transforming for me because I realized nothing in the outer world is going to match the beauty that we have inside the secret chamber of our heart. And it's in another dimension, but we can shift dimensions. I mean, in certain times, I mean, I had a few of these very dramatic experiences that were graces for me, but also to really get me tethered on this path. Probably, like the masters are like, we got to get her home this time. So that was the experience of the threefold flame, and when you look at the Keeper of the Flame lessons, it's all about anchoring and expanding, and they say balancing it first, then expanding it, blazing it, and it becomes a resurrection flame. When Jesus resurrected his whole body in the tomb, he was literally his threefold flame. The threefold flame had grown to where it had enveloped his entire body. And so we had another teaching of how the Master Lord Lanto had a threefold flame so strong that people could see it under his skin, in his chest. That was his experience. And so we are intended to balance and blaze and expand our threefold flame. And as we do so, we gain Christ mastery, because the threefold flame is the Christ flame. It's the flame of our holy Christ self. So the more we have that threefold flame, the more we become one with our Christ self and become the Christ like Jesus. And so that these are very, very important experiences that I had. I'll share one more that was dramatic, absolutely dramatic. And I hear my granddaughter. If you hear something in the background, it's my granddaughter. She's teething right now, so she's vocal. But I was at the Royal Teton Ranch, and we were. It was the summertime. It was after the summer conference, and we were rafting, and we were taking inner tubes to go down the Yellowstone River. And there came a point in time where where the group, the current had taken the group a different direction towards the left, and the current took me to the right. And I had done some prayers to Archangel Michael that morning and everything, but we weren't wearing life jackets or anything. We were just doing it the way the local kids do it. And the current ended up taking me over an enormous rock. And under that rock was a giant whirlpool. And it was probably, I would say, 12 to 14 feet deep. And my inner tube, when I went down into that whirlpool, my inner tube just popped off. It was gone. And now I was struggling with everything I had to try to get up out of this whirlpool. But the water kept sucking me down very, very strong. It was probably, I would say, 10 to 12 feet in diameter. It was a very big whirlpool. And so I remember just struggling with everything I had. It was almost superhuman. At one point, my breath, of course, had left me, but I was still struggling. And then I just said, oh my goodness, I guess the fallen angels have gotten me. I mean, I kind of I knew it was done, I was done. I had to surrender my life. It was a drowning, and I was very much aware of that. And so I went down for the last time. And then time and space spliced, and I found myself about 20 feet away from the whirlpool on the top of the river, treading water. And I have no idea. I mean, it was a miracle. Like, I don't know how I went from the bottom to the top. I didn't feel my body go up. None of that. It was just like when we used to have these old cassette tapes and they would break, and we would take a little piece of tape and we'd try to, cut and splice the tape together to keep going. It was like that happened with time and space for me. And I've heard of other stories like that where, like, for example, one time where Mark Prophet had to go through a wall. I had a friend, my friend Dorothy Lee, who was the messenger of music. She told me one time she drove through an elk. And so these things can happen where all of a sudden it's like the masters intervene, and whether this was Archangel Michael or probably or one of the masters. There was a friend of mine who was in an inner tube behind me. He said it was like he saw like an angel come and do this, but there wasn't even any translation of time and space. It was just like that. And and I've thought about that many times, how we think our life is completely ours, but there are times where the masters will intercede and intervene, and these are, of course, these are graces, but it was also, I had just been on the path maybe 5 or 6 years, and they were willing to extend, to give me that grace, because I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for that. So these are things that can happen when we do the decrees, when we do the violet flame, when we do the services, when we really dedicate our life to the path. Um, Many other things have happened throughout the years, with different situations, car accidents and other things where walk out, it's miraculous, I mean, I'm like, am I still alive? And it's like, yes, you are. And but it's, of course, we don't take any of that for granted. But I have seen the direct and experienced the direct intervention of the masters in very critical situations. And then Archangel Michael has told us how many times he has saved us and we don't even know. We didn't even realize, like they watch over us. They really watch over us, and they really help us. We just have to make the call. And we have to do the violet flame so that we can accelerate the balancing of our karma for ourselves and for the planet. And so these are some of the things that I can witness to. The Like, the masters are really real. The retreats are really real. The violet flame is real, and and not everything we can see through our physical eyes, but that's okay, because we're functioning on we're multidimensional beings. We're functioning on several planes at once. In fact, we've been told that sometimes our souls can be even doing work in other places. I mean, that's how some saints would bilocate. We're not necessarily tied and tethered to a normal life, let's say. And I think once you are on the path for a while, you realize your life is not a normal life. But it doesn't mean that we don't have to, have challenges. We do, and we're tested. We are definitely tested, and we're tested on the lines of the clock for sure, and on all of the various points of the law. And we move up the path like a spiral, So we revisit initiations at a higher level again and again over the years, and it's all part of the process to get us to be able to make our ascension, by the grace of God, truly. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that experience. That is an extreme experience, but I'm also very glad that, you know, you got out in one piece, you're fine, you're well, and the angels and the masters surely help you.
It was extraordinary. I got out of there and I went to the hospital just to see it. I didn't even have water in my lungs. it was unbelievable. I mean, that was way over my head. That was like the height of a room like the room I'm sitting in right now. It was like that. And it made no common sense or uncommon sense. It's like, how can you be 1 minute here and the next minute there, and there's no movement between the two, right? It's like, and that's like the twinkling of an eye, when Jesus says we'll be changed in the twinkling of an eye. I mean, these are things that happen at the right time. I believe our ascension can be the twinkling of an eye too, when we've gotten to the place where we've balanced enough karma, invoked enough violet flame, can have that twinkling of an eye and shift. Jesus demonstrated so many times. I mean, Jesus. I was rereading the Gospels recently, and Jesus would disappear from their midst all the time, and he would, he could materialize and dematerialize, and these are things he could do, and he had probably 95, 96, 99% balance or so, or maybe 100, and he could do these things. I did also create, I've created many websites and other books and products. If you ever, anybody wants to check it out, if you go to ascendedmasterwebsites.com, you will see all the websites that I've worked on. But one in particular, it's called markandmother.com, Mark and Mother. And in that website, we have the miracle stories that I gathered from students and friends of Mother and Mark. So I, about, right around the time of before Mother's transition, I decided to get as many people as I could to send to me their witness stories of Mother and Mark. And they're wonderful, inspiring stories. And I recently put them in a book called All My Love, which is memories from the students of Mark and Mother. You'll see in that that they also had tremendous miracle experiences, and Mother had so much of her karma balanced. So yes, I encourage you to visit. These websites have All My Love in them too, and I think they're very transcendental. And then there's one where I've written a number of books, and I've also, been publishing songs and poems and just doing different things that I feel inspired to do, to leave footprints in the sand and to give a personalized path, right? Because many, we were encouraged, in fact, by the masters to do that, to leave our particular footprint in the sand for others to follow, so that we are the teachings, we are the living teachings. It's not just a book or a video. And even though Mother isn't with us physically anymore on this side of the veil, and though some people have experiences of her in dreams and visions, we are her hands and feet. Just like Saint Teresa of Avila said, Christ has no body now on earth but yours, and you are his hands and his feet, and the mouth through which he speaks. So that's how it works. We're like, we're all integrated in the great hierarchy of life. And as we rise up, the souls that are tied to us, that are rising up behind us, are pulled up. And these great ones who went before us have pulled us up. I mean, I wouldn't be here without Mother. I have an extraordinary gratitude for Mother. She changed my life completely. She completely changed my life. She did, and I will never stop having enormous gratitude for her. But so did Saint Germain. He showed up there on that bus with his picture, and I knew for days that this was going to be a big experience for me, but I didn't know what was in store. And the masters, El Morya gave us so much, and so many of the masters. I mean, there's not Jesus. I mean, there's not a Gautama Buddha. Like he helps sustain the threefold flame of everyone on the planet still who needs extra help, which is most of us. So there's this is really a path of brotherhood, sisterhood in Christ and in Buddha and in God, where we are helping each other get over the hump of our karma and get up the mountain of God. And we are in a situation right now where the Christians call it Armageddon, or whatever this is. We've really got some work to do to get through this time and to help the youth, because they're so bombarded with messages of Antichrist. But there's also a tremendous interest in the higher teachings that they are looking for. So we want to be there to help them, because these souls have come in looking. You know, they're being trained on the inner. They're being trained in the retreats at night also, to find those who can guide them. So, do you have any other questions?
I do. Before we go back to the violet flame, can you quickly speak about the spiritual path that you've mentioned? And you've mentioned also the dark night of the soul. I know there's the dark night of the spirit. Maybe you can.
Well, the spiritual path, it's the walk that we're taking. Mother said once, and I'm paraphrasing, but she said, my job is to get you to become one with your Christ self, to unite to your Christ self. And when that's done, my job is done. Now, of course, you know, we're modeling off of her connection to her Christ self. The Christ self is the part of us that is perfected. It's perfect. He's the mediator between the I am that I am, our God self, and our human self. And so we're walking the path. We're putting on, the goal is to put on more and more of our Christ at each day, to let go of the not self, which the masters have also called the dweller on the threshold of consciousness. I was recently reading a dictation by Jesus where he called it the wretch. The wretch. I thought that was a good way to put it. And so we want to get, you know, basically displace the anti-self, the not self, the dark self, the you know, the fallen consciousness, and replace it with our Christ self. And Jesus gives us a very easy, not easy, but simple blueprint in the Lord's Prayer, you know, and then with his example and all that he brought forth, but all of the other great lights of East and West have given us their a slightly different version, but it's pretty much a lot of similarities. I mean, if you look at Buddhism, Christianity, Zoroastrianism, if you look at Sufism, just the main ideas, it's really about becoming close to God and walking a path of love and service, and improving yourself, really improving yourself for real. And so that's really the path. The path is that. Now, if you're following the teachings of the Ascended Masters, there are services, rituals, books, and things that can help you, you know, follow that path. There are people have ascended from every religion and every walk of life, if they were true to their Christ self. So it's not an exclusive path, but it is certainly helpful to follow the teachings of the Ascended Masters, because we were given so much teaching for the Aquarian Age, the next 2,000-year dispensation. And so we have more teaching and more awareness than has ever been given on the planet, probably since the fall of Atlantis and sinking of Atlantis and all. So anyway, so that's really the walking of the path, is displacing the lesser self and anchoring more of our Christ self. And we're continuously being initiated, meaning that we have experiences that come in our life to test us and try us. And in the olden days, they would have mystery schools where souls would go and get tested in the mystery schools. But nowadays, our mystery school is going to Walmart or going to, you know, wherever we go, work, or with our kids, or watching the news, TV. I mean, the initiations come in all kinds of packages. We don't have to go to mystery school to get the initiations. And so we'll find that sometimes we did well, sometimes we fail our tests, and we have to forgive ourselves, and we have to endeavor to do better when the test comes again. And so that's the path. The path, of course, is facilitated by the violet flame to transmute the karma and the challenges that come up, because we have 4 lower bodies. So all four lower bodies bear a certain level of karma: our mental body, thoughts, our emotional body, our feelings, our physical body, which is where we have disease, but then we also, even our lower etheric body can have issues. So the karma comes in this way. Jesus said, "Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof," and we know that every day there's a certain descent of karma, personal and planetary, that we have to handle, and it is helpful to do violet flame and to serve the masters to transmute that karma. So it's that's really what walking the path is. Now, there is a certain point in the path, we've been told, and we see that in the lives of the saints, including St. John of the Cross and others. And I can say even in my own life, I've experienced the dark night of the soul, where your karma can be so heavy, yours or the planet karma, that it becomes hard. It's like driving through a snowstorm, I would say, where you can't see the next mile marker on the side of the road. And I remember driving through some of these snowstorms in Montana. You have to go very, very slow and be very careful not to drive off the road. Well, there are times where you will have people have very difficult events happen in life, and I think we have to be compassionate about that and aware of that people's lives can have tremendous difficulty at times, whether it's relationships, deaths, medical, financial, or even natural disasters that go on, and so forth, wars, and just everything. Like we have to understand that this is the dark night of the soul, and it can go on for a long time. Some people can have a dark night of the soul that goes on for years and years, and some people seem to get through it faster. But the path is so individual for each person that these are general awarenesses that you can have, so that when you get to that place, you can say, "Oh, I've been on the path, I've been doing the teachings for violet flame for 10 or 15 years. Why is it all of a sudden getting harder?" And this is why the masters have told us to get up the mountain. You need a guide. You have to have a guide. You have to keep on keeping on. When I was early in the path, I would see Mother at conferences, and every time we would get together, she would always say, "Keep on keeping on." And I used to say, "Why does she keep saying that? I mean, of course I'm going to keep on keeping on." But later in life, when I started having some tremendous challenges, I realized what that meant and why it was so important to keep on keeping on and to not lose hope. And these are times where, I tell you, the prayers of other people, other friends on the path, and friendships, people speaking with me and helping me and praying for me, have made all the difference. There's a time when we have to have the community, the Sangha. We have to have like-minded friends who will pray for us. We have to. There's been times where I've even called certain convents and said, "Pray for me, please," because I needed, and I've called the people at the ranch too for prayers. They have healing chalices and prayer chalices and all that. We can't do it alone at a certain point. We need the reinforcement of community. So that's the dark night of the soul. And then the dark night of the spirit, I don't believe I've been through it yet, but I don't know, maybe I have in little bits, because again, it's different for every person. The dark night of the spirit was exemplified by Jesus when he said, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" as he was giving up the ghost on the cross. But it's also been translated as, my God, why hast thou how thou hast glorified me." And so I believe the dark night of the spirit, I've been pondering it, is really where we have to completely let go and let God. It's a level of surrender where the God is God in us. We have to go on what we have anchored of the path in our own being. And it's like we're cut off, I understand from the teachings, we're cut off from for a moment or for a time from a larger sense of support from the brotherhood or the masters, and that is where we have to go through on our own momentum. And it's one of the final initiations on the path. And so it's likely that some people go through that on their deathbed, or in later years. I don't know that it's how to describe that one, and I don't know, like I said, people might go through little bits of it here and there where you feel like, oh, am I forsaken? I feel so forsaken. But that is really a time where there's a deeper inner working going on. It's like Jesus said, you know, like if you have a grain of corn and it goes on the ground, I think it was a grain of corn anyway, it will bring forth much fruit. You know, it's like it's like the death cycle where there's death and rebirth, regeneration, multiplication. It's an alchemy, and it's being willing to go through that alchemy, as difficult as it may be. I have watched two people who were extremely close to the masters, both Mother Kaspari, who was, who'd been to India and was in the Himis monastery where Jesus had been, and she was the friend of Maria Montessori, and worked with Mother and people down at the ranch for the last 10, 15 years of her life, or maybe a little more. But anyway, she passed away after she was over 100. I just happened to be called in right before she was making her transition, like within, an hour or so. And it was a grace. I was so thankful that somebody alerted me, and I drove down the road and went, and I had, at the time, they were giving, Mother Mary was sponsoring the elixir, which was a blessed water, that we could receive from the ranch, and through Mother, and I had a bottle of that, and I went there, and I held her hands, and I sang and spoke to her in French because she was originally from Switzerland. And well, what I noticed at that, when I went in, she was by herself there, and she was definitely on the edge of death, of what we call death, and she was in great agony, anxiety. She was very restless. She was not comfortable at all. She was going through something very difficult, and I was surprised because I had always seen her so affable and cheerful, and she was a model of cheerfulness and graciousness. I mean, one of the most gracious and cheerful people I'd met in the teachings, and here she was in a very difficult place. And so I sang to her, and somehow singing to her in French, by the grace of God, helped her to her soul calm down, like it brought her back to her childhood or something in some way. And then I put these drops of elixir into her mouth, and she could hardly breathe, And then I noticed she calmed and calmed and calmed. And then I found out after I left, I felt like it was complete. She made her transition very shortly after I left. And that was a remarkable experience for me. I'm very thankful that I was there. I love her. And she told me she was Elizabeth, the mother of John, in that life too. She was Mother Mary's friend. And anyway, she showed me that, like what people sometimes have to go through. And that was, I would believe, the dark night of the spirit. Then when my friend Dorothy Lee Fulton, who is Messenger of Music, I was able to see her, I think 2 or 3 days before her passing. And she was somebody who had a complete, direct, one-on-one relationship with the masters, and especially Mother Mary. She would get the music from Mother Mary, but she could tell me, oh, Lanilla was here today, and El Moria and this and that, and she could see them, she could connect to them, she could talk to them. She was the one who said to me at one point, the Machan is telling you you're going to go through the trial by fire, and sure enough, it lasted a long time, like decades, at least 15 years. But anyway, she would get these awarenesses. And she was extremely connected to the Brotherhood. And I remember at one point she was telling me, things are changing my body, but Hercules said the electrons have to find new pathways. And she was and she could feel the fire going up and down her legs. And she said that Lanello had had similar experiences towards the end of Mark in the last years of his life. And so she was there, like this was, maybe 3 days, 2 or 2 days, 3 days before she passed. I was able to go see her, and she was in a very difficult place, and she was just, I'm burning, I'm burning, I'm burning. Her body was burning her. I don't know how much of that was physical or spiritual, but she was in a lot of distress. And here we have someone who, I mean, I had known her. I was even roommates with her for a while. We lived in the same house, and I had known her very closely for over a decade. And I got to see this place where she was really going through it. And I had to pray. I mean, of course I prayed, but it was to show me that we don't know what point when we're going to be called to go through these experiences. Now, there are other people that I know who have passed away very peaceably, also, so it doesn't mean it's going to have to be that way. But what I'm saying is that these people who were extremely attained and had a lot of connections and masters and had been in the path for decades and decades, still had to go through these very difficult moments, so that to me is the dark night of the spirit, where we're glorified, and but we feel forsaken. And so how that manifests for each person is going to be very different, I'm sure. And but those are the final initiations on the path that we were told, when those come, don't be alarmed, like overly alarmed. It's part of the path. You're not ultimately forsaken. But these are some of the more difficulties that we go through as we move further into the years on the path, as we balance more and more of our karma, actually. So, but it's still all worth it, right? I mean, where else are we going to go? Sometimes I tell people or my children, where else are you going to go? What other path is there? There's only one path, and it's going through the top of the pyramid. It's going home. It's making our ascension. I mean, we've reincarnated so many times. I mean, it's time to move on from reincarnating, and that's why Buddha gave his life, to help us, overcome that wheel of rebirth. So anyway, that's I don't know if I have answered your questions or made more questions, but I hope it's helpful.
No, you have. And I'm just thinking, thank God we have the violet flame.
Thank God we have the violet flame. Right, exactly. And first, and it can be very gentle too. I know of some people who've made their transition very gently. It was just, in fact, that one friend, Lucy Crown, I understand that when she took her last breath, there was a picture of El Morya on her altar, on her personal altar, and the picture of El Morya just went poof as she lifted out of her body.
And it disappeared, or
What's that?
it disappeared? Morya's picture?
No, it was a picture that was on her altar, but it fell over. The picture fell over when she left her body for the last time. It can be, I had I cried actually, because I happened to see a video just recently of, this was a man that was, he was he was an older man. He was like in his 70s or he looked like he was late 70s. He was crowded with other people, and he was asking for food aid in Gaza. And he handed them a bucket, and he had he was like almost naked with a beard, and just so he was definitely old and like half starved, and he hands them a bucket for whatever they were going to fill the bucket with. And as he's waiting for them to fill the bucket, he just slumped over, and his soul just left. And that was, I mean, when I saw it, it brought me to tears, and I made a prayer for him. But I realized also that sometimes it can just be like that. you're just taken, like they say in the Bible, one is two laboreth in the field, one is taken, the other is left. I don't agree with, having people go through that level of hardship, but I pray for them a lot. But the point is that some people just slip away very gently. So I don't want to put fear into anybody with things that I've shared, but I do think that some people in different ways go on the cross, I'll share one more story, and then because it touched me so much. This was personal, but it just to illustrate the extraordinary kindness of the masters. And I've had to have a number of surgeries because of different things that have happened to me, like car accidents and other things, and other things. I've had to have a lot of surgeries in this life. I think I counted over 20, so maybe more, 22. I'm over the 20 mark. But this was a surgery that I had it was an abdominal hernia that had to be redone. And I remember going in, and I remember, you have to go in fasting. And I remember thinking, oh, I didn't take Holy Communion. I should have taken Holy Communion. And because sometimes I'll do that even though we're supposed to be fasting. And I said, I didn't take a Holy Communion. And then I remember as it was going into the full anesthesia, I remember thinking the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. That's all I could think. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. And I was thinking that over and over again. And then I got wheeled. Well, then they did the surgery, and then they wheeled me after the surgery into my hospital room. And I was drugged, but like they put you through all of the recovery drugs and all that. And I was in quite a bit of discomfort for sure. I was definitely. And then what happened is when they put me into my hospital room, the most beautiful violin was playing Panis Angelicus, which is Bread of the Angels. And I thought, oh my goodness, I didn't take Holy Communion, but it's playing in my room. And then it went from Holy Communion, Panis Angelicus, to Violet Flame Waltz, like the Blue Danube. And that went on for the longest time. And the nurse came in, and I said, oh, don't change the radio station. And she was like, radio? There's no radio in here. I was like, it was so loud. As sick as I was, I recorded it on my phone. I recorded the Violet Flame on my phone. So it recorded in the physical on my phone. It wasn't just my idea. And I actually posted it on Facebook, which now my account was hacked. I don't think I have that video anymore, unfortunately. But the master played Panis Angelicus for me, and then played like an hour of Violet Flame music in the physical in the room. And yet there was no TV on, there was no radio in the room, there was nothing. And I was able to record it, grabar, as they say in Spanish. I grabbed it. And I was stunned. I was stunned, and I was so grateful. And of course, I ended up spending 6 or 7 days in the hospital because of the pain of that surgery. But that was such a special intervention from the etheric plane merging with the physical, where they actually gave me that gift of closeness through the coughing, thinking about it. But I'll never forget that. I will never forget what it's like waking up from surgery in the hospital and being wheeled into my room. I'm sorry, I'm coughing now. And coughing, but anyway, having this music coming in, perfect music, perfect violin, and it being without any earthly broadcast, and then having it recorded on my phone. So I don't know why my throat is doing this, but you know,
Do you want to take a sip of?
when I was with Dorothy Lee and her throat would do this, she would cough too. And she used to say to me, whenever she would have this cough, she would say to me, a master is in the room. So maybe we have a master here. Because when she would cough like this, she would say, a master is in the room. It was something that happened to the throat chakra. So all of a sudden I'm coughing and coughing. So I don't know if a master is here. We are so welcome for the masters who are with us. We're so thankful for your presence. We're so thankful for these gifts and these graces that sometimes at the most challenging times in our life, we are so grateful for your loving care and watching over us. Like the masters have said, they brood over us like a mother hen over her chicks, you know? So, so it's totally worth it. It's totally worth being on the path and
Said that with the
developing
throat
that
chakra?
relationship with them. What's that?
You said that with the throat chakra. I didn't quite catch the name.
Oh, I used to spend a lot of time with Dorothy Lee.
Oh, I see. I
And
see.
we'd play cards, we'd play canasta, and we'd talk about things. And when we'd talk about certain things, all of a sudden she would start coughing like this. And I'm like, why are you coughing? She's like, oh, a master's just come into the room and my throat chakra expands and it makes me cough. So sometimes there's times even I've had this experience in the court and where we do the decrees and in other places where all of a sudden I'll have this unbelievable cough and it's actually somewhat it's embarrassing to me. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm starting to cough sometimes it's such a violent cough that comes through, but it's like this tickle that happens through my throat and so I just all of a sudden I felt my throat as I was talking about the violin music. My throat just went boom. I think that's what it was. Anyway, I was coughing, but it's gone now. I'm okay again. So I don't know if that's what it is, but I'd like to think that's what it is. And yes, anyway, these are when I have listened to other people and their stories on the path. I just want to say I'm not unique in these things. There are people who've had graces and miracles and experiences and all kinds of things. And it can happen. It happens that, when you're walking with the masters, they walk with you. I did write a book called Miracles, Masters, and Mirth, where I talk about a lot of these various experiences and graces. Dorothy Lee wrote a book called Here I Am, and she said, I'm just focusing on the good parts because she also had very big challenges in her life, and I certainly have had in mine, but I don't want to focus on that necessarily, it's not because in the end we want to celebrate the good, and the grace of God and the glory, not all the mud we had to plow through to get there. So that's what I would say is we focus on that, but we are also aware that the path has both and that it's a journey. I mean, Kuan Yin calls it the bitter sea, crossing the bitter sea. We have to cross that astral sea. We have to cross the sea of our karma. We have to do all of that. And we never know what's ahead on the road. We don't know what lies ahead. So but we know with the violet flame and with the masters and with our constancy and with the help of community, we can get through it, So, yeah.
Thank you so
Any
much. Just
final thoughts or questions? Yes,
one
go ahead.
quick comment for my viewers. You mentioned the ranch a couple of times. That would be the Summit Lighthouse headquarters.
That's the Summit Lighthouse headquarters. Yes, that's the Summit Lighthouse headquarters, and that's where Mother and her staff moved to after they were in different headquarters. They started out in Virginia, then they went to Colorado, then they went to a couple places in California, Santa Barbara, and then Malibu, and then they ended up at the Royal Teton Ranch in Montana, which is next to Yellowstone Park. So that's what I'm talking about there. Yes, and it's certainly a nice place to visit any time of year. But if you like sunshine, the summer is probably Well,
Yes.
anyways, it's nice all the time. There's beautiful hot springs there too.
Nice.
Mm.
To wrap up our interview, maybe at the end now, would you like to share maybe one violet flame experience that was significant to you? Or maybe,
Well,
whatever you want to share.
my first one, I think, was the most significant one, the one I shared with you, because that's what really got me tethered to this path and to this teaching. And it's like when I experienced a violet flame, I knew this was the path for me, that I was going to be a keeper of the flame, that I was tied to Saint Germain for this life, you know? Um, I do violet flame very often, like every day almost, and sometimes for several hours a day, depending on the day and all. And I participate in services and all that. I have seen regularly how if you come in with burdens, you do violet flame, the burdens start to lift. It might take 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, but I'm usually not the same person after I finish a violet flame service than when I first went into the service, especially if I had burdens on the violet flame shifts things. That's the most practical application on a day-to-day basis. I often put my hands over my food and said, charge it with the violet flame. I like to put violet flame into my food or water, especially if I'm eating out. Um, I we had we invoked a lot of violet flame here with the hurricanes. In fact, the last big hurricane we had coming through here, this was last year, I ended up going up the road about 3 hours to the north of Florida and back down. I thought I was going for a different reason, but that reason didn't manifest. So I ended up doing violet flame all the way up and all the way back down. And it was the highway, that 75, that's not far from the coast all the way, you know. And so then, like within 3 days of that, this major hurricane came through and the damage was greatly mitigated. I prayed a lot too because there's a beautiful museum in Sarasota where they have Buddhas and they have incredible European artwork from the Middle Ages, Renaissance, all the way through. It's like going to the Louvre. It's right here in Sarasota. They even have a statue of David. They have incredible pieces of art, and it's right on the water. And I was so concerned that the hurricane was going to come in, and I knew there was no way they could have preserved all of those gigantic. They have pictures of Rembrandt that are so large that it's like they're just huge. They're like huge, huge, huge. It's like I say, it's like going to the Louvre or Smithsonian. And I was like, what are they going to do with all this artwork if it gets if the waves come in right there? It's literally ocean level right next to the ocean. And I prayed and prayed and prayed for not only for the people, but for the museum and for the pieces of artwork. I was really distressed about that actually, because they're irreplaceable pieces of art, and they were saved. There was no damage. There was no damage, and I wasn't the only one to do the violet flame. There were a lot of other people that gathered and did violet flame groups at that time, and then people at the ranch heard about it, and we did a lot of violet flame during that hurricane. And at the end of the hurricane, people took photographs of the clouds. They kept saying it's going to be a higher and higher and higher category, but on the news, but the sky turned purple and people saw it. I saw it, other people saw it. They were, anyway, the sky turned purple. And when I saw the sky turn purple on the news, because I was in Montana praying at that time, I said, oh my goodness, that's the violet flame. And so I have seen how the violet flame can clear things. I also remember years ago, I don't, maybe 8, 9, 10 years ago, there was this enormous oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, or no, the Gulf of America, or whatever, the Gulf. And so I remember I was so distraught by all the pictures I saw of the oil that was, they said it was going to go through the whole world, this oil that was coming out of the Gulf. And And I had friends in Russia at that time, a large group of people in Russia that were praying and doing Violet Flame. And I said to them, you've got to pray for this. You've got to pray for this because the way the media, and not just the media, the way it looked was that it was like going to impact all of the oceans of the world, but especially this area. And I wasn't even living here yet. I was still in Montana. And so we prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed. I prayed diligently for the Violet Flame in the Gulf. And then it was maybe 6 months later, I saw in the Montana in the store in one of the freezes shrimp from the Gulf. And I said, oh, I got to try these and see. And they were perfectly fine. And somehow the entire oil spill was mitigated. I mean, I haven't heard of this oil spill ever since. It's gone by the grace of God. And similar thing happened in Japan with Fukushima. We did a lot of Violet Flame calls for that one. That looked like it was going to be a catastrophic world radiation event through all the oceans, and we made a lot of Violet Flame prayers, and that went up. So there are certain things that haven't been mitigated, like the fires in California or other things, or maybe they were mitigated some, but there are other instances where there was great mitigation. So I continuously put the Violet Flame and my prayers into the various situations I see. Like right now, I'm really praying about the whether it's the economy or the detention centers or the situation in Gaza or just the various situations around the world, Ukraine and all that. The artificial intelligence and where that's going, and I just say put the Violet Flame, Violet Flame, Violet Flame into these things so that we are able to navigate this time without having it go worst case scenario. I mean, even Taiwan, we have been making calls for Taiwan every week on Saturday night for the last 40 years or something, and by the grace of God, Taiwan is still independent. And sometimes it looks really iffy. We're like, I don't know, it looks like we're not, they're doing all these military exercises around Taiwan, and then the next thing you know, it's so far so good. So this is where we understand the power of our collective prayers and our prayers, and that the masters are helping us. And I have to always remind myself, don't get too caught up in what's manifesting in front of you. Just keep putting the prayers into it. So like right now, I personally was very distraught by Alligator Alcatraz, which is not far from where I live. I've seen certain things in the local news which concern me, and I've driven by there and I've prayed, and I'm asking God every day and I know the environment and the beauty of this area and the native villages and all that, and I was like, I'm asking God for this to be removed and changed. Like something has to change, and I could just keep praying, and the day, by the grace of God, and now I'm putting this online, so we'll see. But I just pray that these things will be mitigated. I really do. I really, really, really do, because and that the environment will be preserved, and that there will be God justice and all of the activities that are happening right now. And I really pray that we because we can't have a golden age without the golden rule, which is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I'm really praying that the Violet Flame will soften things and shift things, and also expose things and alert people and create more of thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. So, and I'm praying for the people who are involved too. I mean, yes. So we know that the Violet Flame also we've been told, can dissolve the stronghold of the fallen ones, meaning that those who have evil in their hearts, whether they're aware of it or not, the Violet Flame can dissolve their stronghold. So that's one of the calls I make too, for the Violet Flame to break up some of the strongholds, whether they're in America on the Republican side or the Democratic side. On either side, like I say, let's turn it into violet. Let's turn it into the Violet Flame, so that we have what Saint Germain wants for our nation, and the 14 ascended masters who govern the destiny of America. I was looking at the TSL encyclopedia recently, and just to see not Trivial Pursuit, I call it. And when Saint Germain had a Golden Age civilization in the Sahara a long time ago, before the Sahara became a desert. And uh, there were 14 ascended masters who worked with him then. And these turn out to be the 14 ascended masters who govern the destiny of America now. So they've been with us since the Sahara times, and they know what a golden age is like. So I'm praying for their victory, and I'm calling for cosmic reinforcements from Sirius and from all of the stars of heaven, the Pleiades, and all these places. The masters, in fact, El Morya asked us, he said, please call for cosmic reinforcements for us from other stars and systems of world that have light, that are bringing God's light, so that we can have more light to hold the balance for what's going on Earth. We have to have a victory on Earth so that we have a victory for the golden age. And that's why we're all here. So anyway, I know I've talked a lot, and I appreciate the opportunity. I hope this was helpful, and I'm, just going to try to do the best I can until my life is through, but definitely make it violet as much as possible, and I appreciate the reminder too, to continuously give that violet flame. Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the
You're
time.
so welcome.
Shared your experiences, and the violet flame is a miracle flame. It does change reality.
It does.
Best gift ever, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And if you read Saint Germain, like the Wonder Man of Europe, and all the miracles he did, like he could take flaws out of diamonds and do all kinds of things using the violet flame. So we have to believe. We have to really overcome our doubt, and we have to really believe, and we have to really keep at it, and we have to multiply it. We have to come together to multiply it. So, yeah.
You've given so many tips, and there were so many little gems in everything you've shared with us. Thank you so, so much. I really appreciate it.
You are so welcome. Praise God. I am so thankful. I am so thankful. And I'm so grateful for the masters and their love, and for they stick to us if we stick to them. I'm glad they stick to us. I'm very thankful that we're getting this information out there. So,
thank you so much.
Yeah, well, have a violet flame day, I guess. And and if somebody has never heard of a violet flame decree, we can just say, the earth is a planet of violet fire. The earth is the purity God desires. And yeah.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. All right. Well, God bless you. Thank you.
God bless you. Bye.
Bye.